A reading from the book of Genesis. The Lord appeared to Abraham by the terebinth of Mamre, as he sat in the entrance of his tent, while the day was growing hot. Looking up, Abraham saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, and bowing to the ground, he said, "Sir, if I may ask you this favor, please do not go on past your servant. Let some water be brought, that you may bathe your feet, and then rest yourselves under the tree. Now that you have come this close to your servant, let me bring you a little food, that you may refresh yourselves, and afterward you may go on your way." The men replied, "Very well, do as you have said." Abraham hastened into the tent and told Sarah, "Quick, 3 measures of fine flour, knead it and make rolls." He ran to the herd, picked out a tender choice steer, and gave it to a servant, who quickly prepared it. Then Abraham got some curds and milk, as well as the steer that had been prepared, and set these before the 3 men. And he waited on them under the tree while they ate. They asked Abraham, "Where is your wife Sarah?" He replied, "There in the tent." One of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah will then have a son." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Colossians. Brothers and sisters, now I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake, and in my flesh I am filling up what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ on behalf of his body, which is the church, of which I am a minister in accordance with God's stewardship given to me to bring to completion for you the word of God, the mystery hidden from ages and from generations past. But now it has been manifested to his holy ones, to whom God chose to make known the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles. It is Christ in you, the hope for glory. It is he whom we proclaim, admonishing everyone and teaching everyone with all wisdom, that we may present everyone perfect in Christ. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus entered a village where a woman whose name was Martha welcomed him. She had a sister named Mary who sat beside the Lord at his feet, listening to him speak. Martha, burdened with much serving, came to Jesus and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me by myself to do the serving? Tell her to help me." The Lord said to her in reply, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and worried about many things. There is need of one thing only. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." The Gospel of the Lord. Okay, raise your hand if you have a smoke alarm in your house. If you have a smoke alarm in your house, okay, don't put your hand down yet. I want to see. Okay, good. And it's kind of a little bit of a venial sin if you don't. You know what I mean? So you got to get one. And raise your hand if you change your batteries. Okay, don't worry. Nobody's going to throw you out of church. Raise your hand if you change your batteries when you switch the clocks forward and backward. Okay. I love an honest congregation. Okay. Now, we're all supposed to do it. Now, here was my problem. I thought that the batteries only needed to be, that you change the batteries in your smoke alarm when you spring ahead and fall back. But if you have an electronic one, hardwired into the house, You don't need to, there's no battery, you don't need to change it. True or false? False, right? Now, the other thing is, I'd like to get a show of hands, but I won't. Who agrees with the theory? When the batteries die and it makes that dinging sound, that always happens in the middle of the night and never in the middle of the day, okay? It never happens in the middle of the day. Okay, it's unanimous, agreed, good. Wise congregation, in addition to being honest. So that happened at Monday night over at our place, and the setup in the back of the house there is my room and a half, and then there's a stair that goes down to the basement, and then Father Toledo's room and a half. So it's about 2 o'clock, 2:30, the fourth hour, the third watch of the night, as the Bible would say, the hour when smoke alarms, battery dies, as we might say in the 21st century, and this noise starts going off. And it doesn't really sound like an alarm, but it doesn't sound like that ordinary ding, ding of your batteries died. It's somewhere in between. It's making a funny noise, at a funny pattern. So I stumble out and I said, where is it coming from? And there are these 3 devices in the ceiling. I think, which one is it? And why is it doing it now? And it keeps going, and then Toledo's door opens, and he stumbles out and says, is the house on fire? I said, Toledo, don't you think I would tell you if the house were on fire? What do you think, I just left, walked out in the middle of the fire? So long, it's been good to know you? No, that's not how it works. So we get this thing figured out. It's that device, okay. So this is the slight generational divide. I go up to figure out what's going on. I go to take the thing out of the ceiling, and what's Toledo doing meantime? He's got his smartphone, YouTube. Right? Like what to do at 2:30 a.m. And I said, you make sure that's tuned into U.S. smoke alarms, not Nagaland smoke alarms, right? Because I think they're probably different. And then get to the point, and then we have the big trade-off where I'm trying to look at the back of the device to see what it says about whether it's an alarm or a dead battery. And the print was obviously written with like an atom smasher. You need the Hubble telescope to be able to read the print on the back of the thing. So I said, I just thought to myself, I'm going to ask Toledo, can you read this? And I thought, no, I'm not going to start with that. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's going to start in with the old priest jokes, and I might have to sock him in the nose. I'm not going to ask him for help. I'm just trying to figure this thing out. And somewhere in there, I discerned the word alarm and battery. And that was as far as I got. I could not figure the print. I mean, I'm telling you, it was microscopic. So he goes on, he finds on his YouTube thing, or whatever it was, that if it makes this kind of a noise, it means this. If it makes that kind of a noise, it means that. But he's not entirely sure because he wasn't looking for this brand of smoke detector. And he said, there doesn't seem to be a fire. We should just, I'll go back to bed. I thought to myself, well, you never know. And I wanted to say to him, well, Toledo, I know I'm in a state of grace, so I'm ready to go, but I don't know about you. Are you in it? And we can't take that chance, Plus, you have parents who love you. I don't. So I know we can't do that. And so we go back and forth for a couple minutes and finally realize, okay, it's just a dead battery with a very unusual dead battery sound. But in that moment of, I don't want to ask for help, it's either going to make complications or it's going to cause some kind of friction or something else that's going to extend the process. I thought, okay, right. Just ask him to read it, please, saying to myself. And that invitation to overcome whatever it is that keeps us from asking for help, whether it's efficiency or arrogance or you name it. Sometimes it's just the right thing to do. What makes it the right thing to do? It's what God is prompting us to do. There are 3 different circumstances of one being requesting help from another being in today's readings, and each one of them deserves some attention. Because each one of them, there's probably some good excuse not to ask for help. And the request for help requires interior freedom. Because it is easy to get stuck on those things that make us not ask for help at a time when God is saying, I'm really not asking you to do this by yourself. In the first circumstance, we have a person asking another person for help. And that is the situation with Abraham underneath the terebinth at Mamre. The terebinth, I thought was some sort of, I went through like my first 30 years thinking it was some sort of a structure or a sculpture or something. It's not. It's just a big, it depends on the translation and whatever. It's either an oak tree or a pistachio tree. Who knew that those 2 things were related? I think somehow in Linnaean binomial nomenclature, there's some relationship between a pistachio tree and an oak tree. But the big point is this: they make huge amounts of shade, whatever this tree is. Whether it's an oak, like an oak in a white oak savanna that puts out a great piece of shade, or if it's a pistachio tree, or it's a small cluster of these things, it's a tree that makes great shade. There, Abraham sat in the shade, as the story says, as the heat was building up. Sound familiar? If I drive around town today, I expect to see many of you sitting under your pistachio trees. He sat there. This trio comes along, and because he's stationary and they are moving, the culture of the time said, who's ever stationary owes hospitality to the one who's moving, okay? Now, if you don't want to receive hospitality from the stationary person, you walk at a distance so that they can't engage you. But if you walk close enough for conversation, there's an implied request for hospitality there. And so the passage today starts off with, and the Lord appeared to Abraham at the terebinth of Mamre in the following way. Clear indication that it's the Lord coming, but Abraham doesn't know exactly that it's the Lord. But what does he do? He springs into action. He asks his wife for help. He asks the servant for help so he can provide hospitality for these three people. He doesn't try to do it himself. He's got this great aspiration. It's a last-minute inspiration. He wants to provide help, and he knows he can't do it all by himself. And he's got to get the three things you do are you get their feet washed, you give them something to eat, you give them something to drink, and you lead them out of your territory. Abraham wants to do all those things. He knows he can't do it himself. Maybe it would have been easier for him to do it himself, but he turns to Sarah, and he turns to the servant. Notice one person asking another person for help. The second instance of someone requesting help, notice in the gospel today, Martha asking Jesus, true God and true man, but as she asks Jesus, she's asking God for help. Here in the 10th chapter of Luke's gospel, what we have is a lot of stuff going on. Remember, we've had the dispatch of the 72, the sending of the 12. We had the story of the Good Samaritan, and now we have Jesus getting to Bethany for the first time. Martha's all sorts of annoyed with her sister, but she doesn't ask her sister to help. She asks God to intervene on her behalf, right? And there she is. She asks God for help. Maybe she doesn't even know at the time. She's not clear on the nature of the hypostatic union or if Christ is true God or true man or what he is. But she asks God for help. And what's the answer that God gives her in that request? Sorry, this isn't something that I really want to help you with. And that's a tough answer to take, right? But in addition to the difference between who asking whom, a human asking a human in the Abraham story with Martha, it's a human asking God. And their answer is yes. Jesus' answer is no, because you're asking for something that isn't really a good thing to seek. Wow, but that's the way it goes. And Martha's held up as an example of, yeah, if you want something, go ahead and ask God for it. Even the worst he could do is say no, and sometimes he does. The third example of one being asking another being for help is in the story in the beginning of the reading. As I mentioned before, these people are coming close to where Abraham is sitting. By approaching it, that means that they're asking for help. If you don't want help, you stay far away. These three beings come toward Abraham, and by coming toward him, they're asking for help. And he says to them, since you have come so close, again, if you come this close to where I'm sitting, that means you want us to help you out. So implied in their approach to Abraham is a request for help. Now, we know that Abraham probably doesn't know it's God approaching, but in that implicit request to Abraham, we have God asking human beings for help. Is that something that's unusual, or is it just a messed up interpretation? No, God is always asking human beings for help, right? Go from the book of Genesis. Subdue the earth and fill it. In all the prophets, lo, I am sending you to the land of this, that, and the other one. God's asking human beings to help out. Jesus sends the 12 and then sends the 72. Jesus says, I need for you to help me out in these circumstances. Then there's the Great Commission. And then there's Jesus on the cross saying to St. John, take care of my mother. Yet God asks for help over and over and over again. And this story in Abraham of God asking Abraham for help, it's the way it works. And so where do we go with that? We just do wonder about it, that, salvation history moves forward when we're willing to ask one another for help. God asks us for help. We ask God for help. We humans ask one another for help. Sometimes it's a chore. Sometimes it feels like, I'm just going to do it myself, or I don't want to display this weakness, or whatever else it is. But I'd ask you to divvy up those help-worthy projects into two types. One is just getting a project done. One is just, I need to get the lawn mowed, or I need to get the stairs cleaned, or I need to get the laundry delivered, or the dishwasher emptied. That's one kind of project. Then there's the bigger project of the kind of person I'm becoming. The kind of person I'm becoming, and sometimes I need help with that. Sometimes I feel like I got a monkey on my back for one reason or another, and I just can't shake the monkey off all by myself. Sometimes I'm going through a crabby period, and I need someone to help lift me out of it, but I need to ask for help. Sometimes I feel like I'm focusing on really stupid, petty, annoying things. I don't want to become that kind of person. I need someone's help. I need to be honest about it. When we're teenagers, right? When we're trying to sort it out, that's a good time to ask for help about the kind of person I'm becoming. So I'd ask you to notice where you've gotten it right, where you entered into this great project of salvation history, of people asking one another and asking God for help. Was it a time when you were, who knows what it was? It could be in a relationship. It could be you were consuming too much of this, that, or the other thing. It could be you're spending too much money. It could be you were getting too crabby or too cranky. It could be you'd cultivated a habit that you just knew wasn't a good habit to cultivate. And you turned to someone else and they helped you out. They helped you to become the person that you knew God was calling you to be. When have you asked for help and it was exactly the right thing to do? It wasn't easy and it was right. And where might God be asking you to do that now? Not one of us has all the answers at all times in our lives, and some moments are more acute than others. But maybe, just maybe, where is the place where God's saying, you know what? There's all sorts of reasons why you're going to justify not asking for help. But use your interior freedom. Use the freedom I've given you to put aside those things that keep you from my love. Say yes. Take the plunge. And God wraps it up with saying, you know what? I ask for help all the time, and I'm God. Where have you gotten it right? Where is God nudging you now? So it's about getting over those hurdles, those things that keep us from asking for help and treating it like it's a bad thing, right? And sometimes God is saying, no, you just got to get some other input, right? You can't look up your own nose. You can't see everything you need to see. And so maybe where is that going on? Where you've done it in the past. You've needed help and you thought, and you've sought it, you found it, and it was good. And especially about the kind of person you're becoming, the kind of person I'm becoming. And we know when we need to adjust our courses just a little bit. Where have you gotten it right? Where is the Lord asking you to do it again now? And to use that interior freedom the Lord gives you and the Lord gives me. To step out of those traps that keep me from doing what the Lord wants. And into that real light and happiness of his true peace, huh? Where have you gotten it right in asking for help? And maybe where's the time to do it again? Let us pray.